Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
I could either wish that Washington worked more like Montana or that we could try to do something about it.
Montana's political landscape enters a new realm today as Montana Governor Steve Bullock officially announces his entry in the U.S. Senate race.
Tonight we hear from Bullock and bring you a reaction from his Republican counterpart, Senator Steve Daines.
This is the most consequential election in my lifetime.
Tonight we bring you MTN team coverage from across the state as we move into what could be one of the most watched Senate races this political season across the nation. Well, good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Bullock says political pressure from the Democratic Party is not a factor in his decision.
Bullock says it was a family decision to not stand on the sidelines.
MTN's Jay Cohn and Mike Dennison are standing by live from the state capitol tonight with the very latest. Gentlemen.
The Bullock for Senate campaign was up bright and early this morning. It was just minutes after 6 o'clock that his campaign on its website announced, in fact, Governor Steve Bullock will be a candidate for the U.S. Senate. Mike, this definitely has raised the stakes in this political scene in Montana and perhaps the nation.
Yeah, in more than a few ways. Of course, up and down the ticket in Montana, lots of money coming in, going to help Democrats all over the state with that ground game financing. But as you mentioned, the nation, perhaps more important, it's going to become one of the most expensive, most watched U.S. Senate races in the country.
Governor Bullock made it official Monday shortly after noon as he and his family strolled down the Capitol hallway from his office to the Secretary of State office, where he paid his $1,740 filing fee to become a candidate for the U.S. Senate. Afterwards, he told reporters that the nation needs a bipartisan common sense approach to tackling the big problems of the day, just like he's tried to take in Montana.
You look at some of the big challenges that we're facing, and they won't even tackle them. I think what I can bring is the experience of being governor of a state and actually having to listen to and work with people all across the state, and also work with people that we may not see the world eye to eye.
Bullock had spent months saying he wouldn't take the plunge to challenge Republican Senator Steve Daines. But he and his wife, Lisa, said it was a family decision to change course.
We felt as a family that there is something that is bigger and greater than the five of us need right now. We met as a family and asked kids for their input, which we took to heart. And we just made the decision as a family that at this time it's better to jump in and run and see what we can contribute. Not only for our state, but for our country.
Bullock kicked off his campaign at 6 a.m. Monday with a press release and video touting his accomplishments as governor. And within minutes, Montana was getting a flavor of what's in store. The National Republican Senatorial Committee released a blistering attack, saying Bullock wants to ban guns, impeach President Trump, and ignore illegal immigration. And a left-leaning group, Progressive Turnout Project, announced it would be sinking $750,000 into the race, hiring 26 field staffers in Montana to work toward Bullock's election. Montana State University political science professor David Parker told MTN News that it's just the beginning of what will be an epic battle.
If you look at all the people around the country that put money into races, so these are big donors, these are outside organizations, they're far more willing to take a look at the Montana race and decide, you know what, maybe we can put some money and invest in this race. Whereas before, that was going to be a lot less likely because none of the challengers had quite the reach or popularity that Steve Bullock does.
Republicans currently hold a 53-47 majority in the U.S. Senate. With Bullock's entry into the race, Democrats now have 5 seats they believe are possible flips that could give them the majority. But Bullock is far from a shoo-in for victory.
I think the first thing most of the viewers need to understand is that the advantage always goes to the incumbent, no matter how well qualified the challenger is. So I would still probably at the moment move the seat from a solid Republican seat to a lean Republican seat.
Daines and fellow Republicans have been preparing for many months for a possible Bullock run. And Senator Daines made it clear on Monday that he won't be backing down from the challenge.
This is the most consequential election in my lifetime. We're going to decide the next president of the United States. We'll decide who leads the United States Senate and thereby the future of the United States Supreme Court. This is a big deal for Montana. It's a big deal for our country. And I've always been consistent fighting for more jobs and less government and defending our Montana way of life.
There are other candidates in this race, Democrats, Republicans, a Green, and a Libertarian.
So as you point out, Mike, lots of choices in this Senate race, but actually there are fewer candidates tonight than there were starting the day this
That's
morning.
right. We have 2 Democrats who have dropped out. Cora Newman from Bozeman, Wilmot Collins from Helena have suspended their campaigns and dropped out of the race. There still leaves 6, 7 candidates in the race, but as we know, the race is Steve versus Steve, Bullock versus Daines for the U.S. Senate. That's what we'll be watching. Reporting from Helena, I'm Mike Dennison along with Jay Cohn for MTN News.
All right, thanks so much, gentlemen. Have a great night. Thank you. Well, we also have reaction from Senator Steve Daines tonight, who now more than likely will be in for a much tougher race this fall.
I talked to Senator Daines live via satellite from the nation's capital this afternoon about that and a couple of other important issues. Obviously, this race is going to get a lot of attention. It already is. There's going to be a lot of money thrown at it from both sides. Does Governor Bullock's announcement change your strategy at all, having him as your opponent?
It really doesn't. We always knew we'd have a contrast kind of race. The governor getting the race clearly presents that for the people of Montana. We'll have 2 very different views for the future of this country. The one thing that's very different is I've demonstrated my voting record back in Washington, D.C. Montanans can trust me on these very important issues I described: more jobs, less government, and defending our Montana way of life.
You have stood behind President Trump time and time again. Will he be here to help you campaign?
I spoke with the president last week. He can't wait to get back to Montana. He loves our state. He stands with me. I stand with him in 2020. I look forward to a visit or maybe a couple from the President of the United States.
All right, I want to talk to you about a couple other issues as well, starting with today being the worst point drop ever for the Dow Jones Industrial, the energy sector just getting hammered. That's big here in Montana. How concerned are you right now about what has been happening there?
Well, I watched that closely. In fact, I saw that coming overnight. That's a fight right now between Saudi Arabia and Russia. The Saudis are putting a lot of pressure right now on the Russians of getting involved with OPEC. So that's what's driving this downward pressure in oil prices. It concerns me in that Montana and much of our economy here depends on these good, high-paying natural resource jobs. But I think this too shall pass over time. But it's been very volatile, very concerning. I'm keeping a very close eye on it.
The other big story is the coronavirus. The president has accused the news media, also the Democratic Party, of inflaming that situation. Do you agree with him?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is not the time to politicize what's going on with fighting the coronavirus. It was part of a very strong bipartisan effort last week. We passed an over $8 billion appropriation, a spending package here to focus on containment and prevention on the coronavirus, as well as expediting a vaccine. That's where the focus is. I'm confident in the Trump administration. I'm confident in the Vice President. President Trump asked Mike Pence to take lead on this. They're focused on this literally 24/7. I know there's a lot of concern from the American people, from Montanans, but I'm confident we've got the right resources focused at. We've got to get this plan now deployed as quickly as possible.
So President Trump is coming back.
Yeah, according to Senator Daines, he'll be here at least once, maybe more. So, and you can see this entire interview with Senator Daines right now on our website, KTVQ.com.
Still ahead on Q2 News at 5:30, proactive measures now getting put in place for if and when coronavirus hits Billings.
I'm Mitch Laggy. Local health officials are preparing for coronavirus. After the break, find out the importance of accurate information.
And later in sports, Scott unveils a high-energy tournament edition of Q2 Game Changers, magical passes, buzzer beaters, and some overtime thrillers.
And coming up in weather, we've got some scattered rain and snow showers moving into southern Montana. How long will this stuff stick around? We will have the answer coming up in just a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.